People really don't know what their expenses will be because they don't know how long that they're going to live.
Americans are worried they won't have enough saved for retirement now more than ever.
Retirement is going to cost, for many folks, over $1 million.
Is no sure thing in investing, but a lot of people think that annuities may come close to that.
It's going to more safe things that they know. If they know they're going to need that money to supplement their retirement, well, then you can't play that risk.
This is the Safe Money and Retirement Show with Jon Heischman Sr., founder and partner of Heischman Financial Services, serving the Columbus and surrounding areas. Jon specializes in educating pre-retirees and retirees about safe money strategies and ideas. Now, it's the Safe Money and Retirement Show. Here's Jon Heischman Sr.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Safe Money and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Jon Heischman, with Heischman Financial Services here in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. I hope all my listeners are doing well today, enjoying their weekend, and very grateful that you took a half hour, tuned into my show, and get more ideas that are going to help you with your retirement. Before I get started, I want to give you the number to call to request any information that I offer. And if you have questions or concerns about your situation, by all means, that's why I'm here to help you. That number is 888-426-0177. That number is available 24/7, 888-426-0177. When we think of retirement, almost always it has to do with money, which it should. However, I think there's too much emphasis placed on the financial aspect of retirement as to growing your retirement savings, structuring an income plan, and making sure you're not going to outlive that income plan. But we've got to keep in perspective the psychological aspect of retirement. It's a huge transition in life. Think about it. When you go from 30, 35, maybe 40, some even 50 years of working, and now you're retired, it's a big impact, a big shift within a person's life. About 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting with a client who I've been working with probably going on 30 years now. He's had growth. His plan is set up to where he has several different sources of income, 2 of which are guaranteed. And financially, he's going to be set during his retirement. But he wanted to meet with me to discuss whether or not he was ready for retirement and what he was going to do. Not only was he concerned, but he was actually scared. Too much free time. And he didn't have a lot of hobbies and wasn't particularly interested in traveling and just very concerned. Unfortunately, his wife passed about 3 years ago. So he's a single male in his late 60s, wanting to retire. But as I mentioned, he's scared of the thought of having too much time on his hands. You know, I think everyone gets to a point where it's time to retire. And that's why some retire early. Others may never retire. But what I have seen from my clients and those I've spoke to over the years, when they really start thinking about it's time to retire, financially they're in good shape. But there's always going to be a group, I believe the numbers are right around 35%, maybe a little bit more, that are worried What are they going to do during retirement? Too much time on their hands. When he came in, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we sat in the conference room and just had a wonderful talk about retirement. And I think it lasted about 2 hours. And I gave him my perspective as to what I would do if I was retired, what I've seen other clients of mine do now that they're retired. And I kind of helped him think more about what he was going to do with his time. And after going over the options, the ideas, he left and felt much better, had some direction, and had more of an idea as to where he was going to go and do in retirement. There's always the option to continue to work, either at the same job or take on a new profession, a new job, something entirely different, whether it be full-time or part-time. And we did talk about that, but he was to the point where he just didn't want to work anymore. And I encouraged him, if you're not going to work, you need to stay busy. And I think it's a big part of retirement planning. Again, as I mentioned, assuming an individual can retire from the financial standpoint. If not, there really isn't a choice. A person is going to have to extend their career by working longer for a couple of more years until they get to the point to where they can. What a retiree doesn't want to do is to lose their sense of purpose, their identity when they retire, when they stop working. There have been different polls that have gone out over the course of time, test observations, controlled questions that have been asked of certain group of individual retirees. And it's astonishing to me that statistically 1/3 of retirees today experience or have experienced a state of depression as a result of retirement. When you retire and all of a sudden you no longer have that one thing that was in your life that you had to do, you had to go every day, you can go into a state of depression. It's a loss of routine. And I get that. I can see how that would happen. Plus, that social connection is gone. Those employees you see every day, probably you had lunch with them and became friends with many, is gone when you leave that job. And what you don't want to do is be affected by a depressed situation or develop health problems because all of a sudden the retiree has become inactive, not involved, no socializing, which I think can only shorten a retiree's life expectancy. There have been many times that I have consulted with a client and made the recommendation that well before you retire, start planning what are you going to do with your time during retirement. Start some hobbies or interest now. Work into how you're going to fill your time during retirement. And I think by planning ahead, we can prevent the problem with the psychological situation in retirement. We all plan financially, but there are a lot that don't even think about what they're going to do during retirement. So if you're thinking of retirement, do two things. Make sure you're financially set to where you can retire. If you want a second opinion, give me a call. Secondly, start thinking about what are you going to do. And if you need some ideas or need to talk to me about that part of retirement, I'm here to listen. And as I mentioned earlier, I've been able to help clients prepare and start thinking about the time you're going to have when you're retired. 888-426-0177. You can reach me at that number. I'm going to give you my office number as well here in Reynoldsburg, 614-861-7055. Visit my website, HeischmanFS.com, HeischmanFS.com. And by the way, I don't want to forget that I do have a new supply of the book I sponsor entitled Top 10 IRA Mistakes. It's especially valuable to those that are getting ready to retire and have 401ks or 403bs, any retirement plan that is a qualified plan, advice, what to look for, and how to make the right decisions for that rollover account. I'd be happy to send you a book. It costs you nothing, and there's absolutely no obligation. Top 10 IRA Mistakes. 888-426-0177. So stay tuned. I'm going to take a short break at this time. I'll be right back bringing you the second half of the Safe Money and Retirement Show.
Thanks for listening to the Safe Money and Retirement Show with Jon Heischman. For more information, call 1-888-426-0177. That's 1-888-426-0177. Or visit their website at HeischmanFS.com. More of the Safe Money and Retirement Show in a moment.
Avoiding mistakes can save owners of IRAs, 401ks, and TSP plans, as well as other retirement plans, a fortune in taxes, penalties, fees, and loads. These potential mistakes are addressed in the free book entitled Top 10 IRA Mistakes. This is Jon Heischman from the Safe Money and Retirement Show, offering a complimentary copy by calling 888-426-0177. Again, that's 888-426-0177.
Welcome back to the Safe Money and Retirement Show with Jon Heischman. To contact Jon, the number to call is 1-888-426-0177. That's 1-888-426-0177. Once again, here's Jon Heischman.
Welcome back to the Safe Money and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Jon Heischman. I want to take the rest of the show this morning to talk about qualified plans and the baby boomer generation, which I am part of that generation, and there are approximately 10,000 baby boomers reaching retirement age every day. And they also control the majority of the wealth of America. How well this generation manages this money is of enormous importance to everyone. And most of you know that those born between 1946 and 1964 are in this generation. The majority of boomers will have at least one, if not several, qualified retirement accounts. And when I say qualified, this is in the area of IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, TSP plans, pension plans. We have to include those because most companies that have a pension plan are offering their retirees the option to take a lump sum payout. If you're a boomer, which many listen to this show, and you're part of the group with the highest probability of having your own IRA and these other qualified retirement plans that I just mentioned. Also, this generation will be inheriting IRAs from their parents, probably more so than any other generation. It's very important to note that the inherited IRAs that you may receive, they're different than your personal IRA, which distributions from these accounts can create mistakes, costly mistakes when it comes to the IRS. So let me touch on the inherited IRA, or it could be a 401k. This must be treated differently than your individual IRA or 401k because you cannot take, or I should say delay taking distributions from that inherited qualified account. When I say delay, most retirees will delay taking the required minimum distribution until age 73, but not the inherited accounts. However, you're still in control of your money even when you inherit an IRA or that 401k account. You can decide the best distribution method for your needs. You're going to have two options. Option one, if you decide to use all of the money now from an inherited IRA, you'll need to pay all of the income tax by the end of the 10th year after you inherited that account. So if you're still working and have earned income, this approach could put you into a higher marginal tax bracket. So let's talk about option two. You can pay a portion of the tax each year as long as all of the taxes are paid within that 10-year rule. This approach will add taxable income each year, but may help you stay in your current marginal tax bracket. One other note about that is after inheriting an IRA, under the current rules, you cannot convert the inherited IRA to a Roth IRA. We've got to make sure we get this right because it's not unusual to see a retiree or soon to be have one or two inherited IRAs, one or two, maybe more of their own individual IRAs, and let's say a 401k plan. Not only do we need to plan how distributions are going to be taken for income, but we also need to plan for the tax aspect of receiving these distributions. You've heard the old saying, everybody is different, and they are. So when you're in that situation where you have multiple accounts and a couple of inherited accounts, you need planning advice based on what distributions are you going to take first? What portion of accounts or all accounts that could be converted to a Roth IRA if it fits into your planning your best interest. And that's where I think retirement income planning becomes fun, challenging, and making sure it's done correctly. I'm going to give you the number to call because I know a lot of you listening will fit into that situation. And even if you're not ready to retire, it's smart to look ahead as to what you may be facing. 888-426-0177. Once again, that number is 888-426-0177. I'd love the opportunity to help sort things out, give you some ideas to think about for the future. One thing about this generation is big business. Everyone wants a bite of your retirement savings. Everyone is going to be ready to give you advice, but keep in mind that all advisors or planners may not be skilled in the distribution rules, and not getting the correct advice can lead to one of many IRS tax traps. So make sure you're armed with the right information and who is giving sound financial advice to make sure these accounts are set up correctly and will benefit you, and if you're married, as well as the surviving spouse. You've got to keep in mind retirement planning has to make sure that the plan continues to the surviving spouse and not just the client as well. Earlier, I mentioned a Roth IRA. You cannot convert that inherited IRA, but you do have the option to convert a non-IRA or 401k to a Roth IRA. Now, you do pay the tax up front, whether you convert all or partial, but you'll be able to enjoy a tax-free income distribution later. Couple of things that I want to point out. A non-spousal beneficiary cannot become the owner of an inherited IRA, or they can't deposit that money into their own personal IRA. So making either one of these mistakes is going to cause the inherited IRA to become immediately taxable. Non-spousal beneficiaries cannot take any distributions to an inherited IRA. Here's another point. If the deceased account owner was past the required beginning date after turning age 73 and had not taken the required distribution during the year of death, the inherited non-spousal beneficiaries must take a distribution equal to the distribution of the IRA owner, which would have taken if still living. Just another little detail that we must be very careful of and make sure you don't make a costly mistake. If you're a baby boomer and you've contributed to your personal IRA, 401k, 403b, even a 457 plan, any other qualified retirement plan, and have inherited, or let's say expect to inherit a qualified plan, please feel free to contact me for help to make sure you get the right advice as to what is best for your situation on all of these accounts that many do have. I've seen what I call some wild situations where potential clients have several 401ks that are still with previous employers, they have their own IRA or two, and they have inherited or they're going to inherit one or two IRAs from parents or brothers or sisters. I'll give you my number again, 888-426-0177, 888-426-0177. A lot of this information is in the book that I sponsor, Top 10 IRA Mistakes, How to Avoid the IRA Tax Trap. It's yours for the asking, no cost, no obligation, and I would like all of my listeners to have a copy. All you have to do is call the number I give you, request a copy of the Top 10 IRA Mistakes. So I'll give you the number one more time, 888-426-0177. I appreciate you joining me this morning and listening to the Safe Money in Retirement Show. I'll be back next week at the same time, same stations, so please tune in.
The Safe Money and Retirement Show with Jon Heischman Sr. To get in touch with Jon, call 1-888-426-0177. That's 1-888-426-0177. For more information about Heischman Financial Services, visit their website, HeischmanFS.com. That's HeischmanFS.com. Join us again next time for the Safe Money and Retirement Show with Jon Heischman Sr.